Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Mary here. Mary, you've been behind so many incredible works. Specifically, the Magic Treehouse series is one I think is super well known. But I read when I was young. It was very impactful. I thought that there was this incredible adventure. I think it helped me probably learn to read much more. I'm sure it helped millions and millions of people. You've done over 100 million copies of it. So I'm sure it's helped a lot too. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Thank you, Ben. I'm glad to be here and share whatever I can offer that's helpful.
Awesome. So Mary, early on, how did your passion for writing begin?
Well, I really didn't know I wanted to be a writer till I was in my 20s. I always lived in my imagination, and I did a lot of theater when I was growing up, and went to college and majored in theater, and then I jumped into philosophy and religion junior year. I never took any writing courses. I I just had not aimed myself in that direction. In my 20s, I moved to New York City to live with my husband, who to be husband then. He was an actor and he was living there. And uh, we moved into this, sixth floor tenement walk up that had no sink in the bathroom. And just, we were poor, but we were happy. And I started trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I would waitress and bartend, and in the day I'd go up to the roof of our old building and take a director's chair and sit down and read or write. And over time I began to realize that I loved making up stories. And I started writing stories about little animals. Most people start with animals when they want to do children's books. And then some friend asked me to uh, organize a writing contest for kids for Scholastic magazine. So I would be paid for it, and I took on the gig and thought it would be, lucrative. But something else happened I never expected. I couldn't find enough people to help me read the entries. They were um, written by children 9 to 11. The subject was something that happened that changed my family, and there were about 30,000 entries for Scholastic. So I read thousands myself. And so I got through the job of choosing and picking and finding things. But something happened internally in that process where this voice came, my voice of 9 to 12 came up, and I sat down and I wrote down this novel that was very sad and very honest, but very powerful, I guess. Because the first person that it was shown to wanted to buy it as a young adult novel, but they wanted me to rewrite it. So I didn't really have those skills, and I just got every book I could on writing as I was trying to, already sold, but I didn't know, if I could do it again, write it. And this sounds pretentious, but I went to the library and got every book on Hemingway that Hemingway wrote and what Hemingway's style was, because I didn't want to write down to kids. I didn't know how to do that. I hadn't ever studied. I hadn't done education or um, hadn't worked on things for children before. So I learned how to put sentences together in simple ways, clean, honestly. I felt like it was so exhilarating to get into the technique of Hemingway. And I rewrote my book with skill and changed the plot, deepened it, made it much longer. So that book came out. And then in those days, they didn't ask if you sold a lot, then you got to sell another book. They just, if you got a few good reviews and the editors liked it, they took another chance on you. So over the next few years, I wrote 3 more young adult novels, and they were all published. Again, good reviews, but I hardly made any money. And I don't think the public knows how little money you usually make in publishing. Like, you just get a small percentage, very small, of the profit of the book. And usually they give you an advance ahead. And I think my advance for that first book was only $2,000. And then often you don't even earn back the advance with your royalties. That used to be the way it was. But people had faith in you and they kept inviting you to do more. Thank God they did that, because I kept writing and I turned to mythology and folk tales and And I did favorite Greek myths and Norse myths and medieval tales and mermaid tales and American tall tales. I even did a book on the world religions. I was just loving the whole process of gathering information, but I wasn't making any money to speak of. So we were actually in that old apartment for 17 years. And I think that at some point I decided I really have to get out of this rut because a day's going to come when they don't take more chances with me. So around that time, Random House asked me, would I like to do a series? But it wouldn't be a trade series, as they call it. I wouldn't be trade books where they get reviewed and they get into contests and they get awards, which is kind of the domain I'd been in that didn't prosper from, but had in some integrity. I took the risk. I just signed up for 4 books. I tried to combine. I get to do anything I wanted. So I thought of time travel. I thought of mythology. I thought of history. I thought of my closeness to my 2 brothers. I'm a twin to a brother too, and how we played as kids. And I got it. I did, and I started visiting 2nd grades and 3rd grades because this would be for younger kids, and I'd never done that before. Mine had been more middle grade and YAs. And I fell in love with that age group, and I started going to schools. And then something happened to me that had never happened with all the books I'd written before. I started getting lots of letters, and they were from teachers and parents about how these little magic treehouse books, and it did take a long time to come up with the treehouse. I had a year where I tried a magic museum, magic cellar, magic whistles, a magic artist studio, was spinning my wheels and walked through the woods where we had a little cabin in Pennsylvania and saw an old treehouse. My husband and I, wish we'd had one of those as kids. And then it was like, well, what if they have a magic treehouse? And then what if it's filled with books and a simple device, you open a book and you go to the place. I tell kids when I talk to them, the simplest ideas can take the longest time to find. It took a year to come up with that. And I was about to quit that whole process, my other work. So I turned in the first magic treehouse, Dinosaurs Before Dark, and it went out, and then Night at Dawn, and then Mummies in the Morning, and then Pirates Past Noon. And then the publisher said, Random House, why don't you try 4 more? Well, those, gave me more money. They gave me enough to pay my rent. I'll put it that way. So then I went to Night of the Ninjas, Afternoon on the Amazon, Sunset on the Sabertooth, Midnight on the Moon, 8 of them. And I was going to schools. A lot of authors do school visits. At least they did back in the day. And you'd get paid for that too. So I'd make sure I had enough school visits to pay my rent and my utilities and whatnot. But something happened there. Not only was I getting letters, but I started talking to teachers and I started talking to kids, and I get kids to vote on the ideas I was thinking of. I would ask them to vote on covers. I'd take their ideas in, and teachers would show me all these wonderful projects the kids had done. I went to dozens. I carried my slides in the day on buses. I stayed in motels. I literally began canvassing my audience across the country for a while. And then I thought, well, the one priority that doesn't see what I'm seeing is the publisher. And a lot of people think that the publisher will take care of everything and your agent, you don't have to do anything but write. But that's totally not true. You have to become aware of your audience. There's a great quote I love that says, the spot where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need can be what you do with your life. So I had the deep gladness. I was so happy writing these books. And the need was helping children learn to read. And the letters I was getting were about helping children learn to read, that the books were doing it. So then I realized I had a vocation. I had a real reason to do what I was doing. And I'd always initially intended to go back to my other work, even write for adults. I wrote a play that was off Broadway. I was thinking I would get into other kinds of fields in writing. but I got sucked into this whirlwind of the literacy ambition of helping kids learn to read. And so I started devoting myself to Magic Treehouse. And I must say, I accrued a wonderful team over the years. I got my husband, who wanted to write nonfiction books to go with my books. So my name's on it, but honestly, he did those books. They're called the Magic Treehouse Fact Trackers. Then we were asked to do a planetarium show at our alma mater at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Will wrote the show, and we turned to my sister, who's gifted, and asked her to take. We asked her to overtake the fact trackers, and she wrote another 30 or she'll maybe 40 even. And also, Will is in theater, as I said. He's a musician and a performer. He and our two best friends, who were both professionals in New York City as a playwright and a composer, they moved up here to live near us in Western Mass, and the three of them began writing musicals of Magic Treehouse. Now, all of this is just practically in our kitchen. We were getting interest from Hollywood and TV, but I have to share that I brushed it away. I didn't want someone to overtake what we were doing and change my ambition to get my message across with Magic Treehouse. And I knew I'd lose a lot of authority. We would amplify the sales and make a lot of money, but I just time and again, my husband and I really agreed to say no. And then I kept doing it. And I would say that after 30 years, almost 31 or 2 of Magic Treehouse, I can't stop. I'm working on the 65th book now, and I've never had more fun, and I'm addicted to it. And I just pray my readers keep reading the books, and that the new generations pick them up. And that seems to be happening. And it's been so rewarding because now I'm meeting adults who read the books like you when you were kids, and it's another whole thing. And I recently gave a speech to a lot of young adults, and I said, it's not me. When you come up to me, and sometimes they're tearful, it's not me, and it's not even my books. It's who you were when you were 7 and 8, and you were crossing the divide from not knowing how to read to taking all these little figures on a page, and suddenly they animate themselves, and you're living a story in your head that becomes a part of your life. And that's what you remember. And that's what you may never want to forget. And I talk to adults about getting back in touch with that 7-year-old self that first started to read. So we're going with the plays now. And actually now for the first time, we have a group in Hollywood that we really love. They're really, as you say, on our same page, and we're totally involved. In fact, we're co-partners, and we're starting to create something that could have another medium. But it feels safe now because it feels like the books are the books and they won't be changed or, I used to be afraid that if you had a TV show or a movie, one year they'd be the best sellers in the world, but the next year they'd be on a flea market table, that it would kill it in a way. And that's probably not true, but that's what I was worried about. And so waiting till now seems like the right time. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that definitely does. So, I would say when I was younger, when I was learning how to read, and definitely getting a bit older, I remember just the excitement and the fun aspect of the stories that it didn't even feel like reading. They were just these like magical stories and so out there, and you like to even imagine this type of stuff when you're that young, it was like whoa.
Well, I think the secret was to make real kids who behave honestly. They sound like kids. They make choices like kids, but they're in a fantastical situation. You can get your reader into believing anything if you give enough detail and make it seem honest. And so that's what I've always tried to do. And I think that a lot of the joy of doing it comes from me getting to be in that mindset forever. I've been a 9-year-old boy for 32 years, and I'm still finding the world astonishing. And the subjects I choose, uh, I don't know. I'm not no expert on anything, but when I do all my research, I become knowledgeable to the point where I can imagine a story, and my enthusiasm hopefully comes across, and the reader feels the enthusiasm. But it's kind of a magical process in itself. And I think being a writer and having a young audience, I can't imagine it more gratifying because they're so kind. They send you food, they send you letters, they send you jewelry they made, they send you invitations to their birthdays. You get this wonderful, fresh, beautiful way of being in the world, and it keeps giving you the inspiration to keep going.
That's awesome. So you've been able to really do a lot of like promoting children's literacy through your work. Like, would you say, like, Mary, there's a way that you like design the books that they're more inviting to people? The kind of the stories you crafted, the way they're written. Like, what would you say have been some of the biggest aspects that you've intentionally done to really help promote children's literacy?
Well, no, there's only one thing you have to do is try to make a good story and keep kids turning the pages. And don't let like you don't let them know they're learning to read. You don't want to make it didactic, and you don't expect it to come from a textbook, the magic of this process. You want them to just live it, and then identify with it and carry it away with them in their hearts so that they remember it. And that process is just the process of creation, and trying to make a world that you can bring somebody else in to share with you. Um, somebody once said, writing is like a vivid and continuous dream, and it's your job as the writer not to break the dream. So you bring the child in, young adult, whatever it is, and you spin a yarn that used to be told. We used to do this around fires and fireplaces and hearths, for since man's been able to talk, I guess, on Earth. And now we have all these amazing tools. And the fact that I can do this on a laptop and it accelerates the process of doing it, the research I do through books and through the internet, is part of the success of it. That I mean, I wouldn't be this prolific probably if it hadn't been for those tools. But it's all come together for me in a very inspiring way.
That's great. Mary, so you have this process for creating books. How long does it take you in terms of the research and everything else you have to do, first draft, to actually go and make something and get it published?
Well, because I got in a groove, and I must say my publisher's wonderful. And one of my jobs over all the years has been to work with a team there, to work with my team here who do the other parts of Treehouse, and now to work with the team in LA and to keep everybody together and connected. And, I'm going to get to your answering you, but the secret of that is not getting your ego all twisted into it, but looking at the thing itself, and everyone gets together to make that thing work, not make them work, not make their there's never any conflict. In other words, not with the artists, not with the editors, not with any of the other people involved, because we're more concerned with the product. And because of that, I've been on a tight deadline skill for all these years, deadline situation where I have to deliver something at a certain time. And I innately, and I don't even write the same way every day. I don't, like so many writers say, well, I get up at this time and I write till then and then I'm done. I write wherever. When I lived in New York City, I could write in Grand Central Station. When I had no place to write in my first years, I literally sometimes got on the Staten Island ferry and got a ticket, went back and forth, and was working on tablets. My big challenge in New York was finding a place to work. Every library saw me and so many coffee shops. Now I have a comfortable place to work, but I can work anywhere, anytime. And unconsciously, I meet my deadlines. I get in enough hours, enough space I usually take about 3 months of research and creating the story, and then another 3 months of the editing and the art, going back and forth and back and forth. And then I turn it in and I start on something new. So right now I'm at a stage with the last book I wrote was Sea Otter Sunrise, about sea otters, saving them in California in the Monterey Bay. And I'm already thinking of where they'll go next. So that's the most exciting part of the process. And I get tons of books, looks at tons of sites. Now I'm looking for 4 heroes to do a quartet on people who help save Camelot that Jack and Annie get involved with. So I've got all kinds of books coming in from different sites, and I'm looking at things that might ultimately yield an exciting story, but also a story that will help kids in their lives. I don't publicly make statements about my values and my ethics and my opinions. I try to put it in the books because I want the whole audience for me. I don't want to limit my audience. I have every kind of person. The books are in 35 languages. I've toured other countries and talked to those kids. When it comes to 7-year-old kids, they're remarkably the same all over the planet, year after year after year after year. It's sort of like the last of the perfection of the human being, because they haven't gotten into peer pressure, or social media, or they've come out of babyhood where it's not just about them. And that 7 and 8-year-old place is where they're open to the world. And so I keep being replenished by their ideas and thoughts. And amazingly, they seem to be interested around the world in the same subjects. I can't describe it. But when I did ninjas and I did the moon and pirates and medieval times and dinosaurs, it was a universally popular way to approach the series. And those were all the first ones. Now it's a little more esoteric, but I still pull people in with animals. And I've done a lot of disasters, as you might have noticed, like twisters and hurricanes and tsunamis. But those are fun ways to get readers over the bridge into a new world. And I lure them, and then I bring them in and I tell them a story that hopefully they'll learn something from.
How do you balance the characters? The two main characters. How do you balance their personalities, their relationships that they have, the relationship they have, and how they interact in stories?
Well, that now they tell me who they are, because they've been there for so long. They have their own lives, and the brother, was more cautious, more learned, more exacting, more left brain, you could say. The little sister is spontaneous, courageous, innocent, um, totally right brain. So they bring to each other these complementary features that make them one person. And I think that happens unconsciously to a lot of us. We have partnerships with people who have different talents than we have, and together we make a wholeness. I mention I have a twin brother, so I guess we were doing that all of our childhood, complementing each other and filling the deficits of the other. So that's sort of where that comes from for me, is my own relationship with my brother and uh, and my husband. I would hope any adult becomes more complete in themselves as they learn from the other. They widen their scope of perspective and talents. She's more thoughtful now, he's more courageous now, and that interplay is something I work with in all the books. And you see it in the musicals, and anything we've done creatively echoes those relationships.
So, what do you aspire to do now, Mary? Like, what are some maybe new elements you want to introduce to your books? Like some things that you haven't done yet that you want to accomplish.
Well, I think I want to do something new within Treehouse. I want to pull away from the traditional just format, and I haven't figured. I mean, we have graphic novels now, and my best friend writes those or adapts my books into those, and wonderful artists um, do the illustrations. So, and now, like I said, we're working with people in LA. So I'm still overseeing a lot of different tributaries that come out of the center, being my fiction books. But I think I enjoy um, kind of overseeing the whole process and nurturing it along. And in my own writing, I suspect that I'll just try to discover something fresh and new to do. So far, it's amazing. I haven't gotten bored, thinking about all these things. And the world is endless. It supplies you an endless amount of subjects and possibilities. And so I just have to keep tapping into that.
Literally. Well, Mary, I appreciate you coming on. That's all the questions that I had. I think what you've done has been super incredible and helped a lot of people learn to read. And I'm excited to see what you're going to do next.
Well,
Awesome.
thank you, Ben. And one last note I should offer is that I created a website called Magic Treehouse Classroom Adventures for Teachers, where teachers can go on there and get any information they need about the books, how to use them in the classroom, and they can even apply for a grant through the website to get free Magic Treehouse books if they're a Title I school. So that's Magic Treehouse Classroom Adventures, and we've given away now over 1.1 million Magic Treehouse books to schools that couldn't afford them otherwise. So we want to get all the kids over the bridge to reading. And I think that's the goal, the long goal for this whole project.
That's awesome. People should definitely check it out.